This is a Momentum Media production.
Welcome to the Smart Property Investment Show, the podcast by investors for investors.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time of day you are listening to this episode of the Smart Property Investment Show. I'm Grace Ormsby and pretty excited to be bringing you a brand new episode and a brand new guest. And we put a little call out a while back now asking for more female investors to reach out to let us know what they're doing with their property portfolios, saying that we'd love to hear from them. And Tam Thorogood is one of those people who answered that call. Tam, thank you so much for your email. I was so excited to hear from you. It's great to have you on the show today.
Thanks, Grace. Yeah, I just get a lot of value out of your show and the call went out. So I thought it's probably the least I can do given all the good content that you guys provide.
I loved as well. You literally just gave me this screenshot of your portfolio. Like everything was listed out there. It was amazing. And there's so much to it. And hopefully we can unpack a lot of that today. But it sounds like you're pretty much living the dream, Tam, at the moment.
Well, I've started. It's taken a while to get here. It's a good nearly 30 years. But yeah, the last 2 years I've kind of kicked back a little bit, enjoyed the fruits of my labour with an investment portfolio and, yeah, doing more time for myself than actual work. So, yeah, I'm happy.
Good on you. So before we do unpack that portfolio, life, as we just said, looking pretty good at the moment. Was it COVID inflicted as well? You just kind of said, the last 2 years. And I think everyone's had a bit of a shift over that period. Did COVID have much of an impact on that?
I think the opportunity that presented in the investment market as a result of COVID potentially helped. But for me personally, no, it wasn't actually COVID. I just had the opportunity to I pretty much doubled my portfolio during COVID because the opportunity presented. So, yeah, I wasn't personally affected by it in any way. But, yeah, it's the timing was right to increase my portfolio.
There you go. Well, the email that you sent, Tam, you said you started investing when you were 20. And so that was a fair while ago now. I don't want to put your age out there. Happy for you to, if you feel comfortable with it. But around 3 decades of investing under your belt now. So, started obviously back early 90s. What initially, drew you to the world of property?
Yeah, I don't think there was any one thing. My parents weren't in property. I had time in the Air Force when I first sort of came out of school that instilled some good qualities in getting my life sorted and what I wanted to do. And my mum just sort of said to me one day, she just said, go do something responsible. And I'm like, I'm not really sure what that means. But, yeah, I picked up, I think it might have been Steve McKnight's book, the original one of 0 to 120 properties. And yeah, I just kind of went with it from there.
So that first property purchase that you did make, can you talk us through any of the specs of that?
Yep, completely uneducated. I lived in Coolum Beach at the time and I always thought I wanted to live here long term. Like I would go away for a while, do work in other states, but I just thought, right, I'm buying a block of land in Coolum so that I know that one day I can come back here. So, yeah, I think it cost me about $40,000 in Coolum Beach.
And do you still have that block of land in Coolum Beach?
No, Grace, I don't.
Because I was going to say $40,000, that would be worth a lot more in this day and age, especially post-COVID and what we've been seeing up in the Queensland market. So we won't talk too much on that, whether there's regret there or not. But what kind of happened then, over that first few years of that portfolio then? What did you do after making that first purchase?
Yeah, I guess I went to a lot of seminars and continued educating myself after reading Steve's book. I was pretty much a seminar junkie. I did land myself a job with Telecom back in those days, which now is Telstra. It was a well-paid job and I travelled sort of the eastern side of the country, and each time I was transferred to a different area, I just kind of bought a crappy house that I could renovate. My strategy was to buy something that needed some value added because I'm a hands-on kind of person, and just built my portfolio that way.
So you held on to the property even after you'd moved on from the location?
Yeah, in my 20s and 30s, my strategy was to buy, add value and hold. So yeah, that's sort of how I guess I built up the equity then to later on switch to commercial and developments.
And so what was the kind of, you've got the strategy there. Now I'm just thinking, what was the motive behind, taking that journey on? Because I feel like for 20, that was a pretty responsible thing to do in the first instance. So I'm curious how the plan kind of changed or shifted over the years since then.
Yeah, I wanted to be 30 and replace my income. That was my goal through property in particular, have a decent sized portfolio where then I had choices to make on what I could do moving forward. It didn't all turn out that way as expected, but I gave it a red hot go in that time period.
Because 10 years is a pretty quick period of time to be, having those aspirations, but good on you for doing that, because it obviously did still set you up for some pretty long-term success. What position were you at then by the time you sort of hit 30 and maybe weren't quite in the space that you'd hoped to be a little bit earlier?
Yeah. When I reached 30, I had 10 residential properties, and I was looking at that point to go, okay, I think I can do this full time now. So I did take long service leave from Telstra, and I spent 6 months doing renovations, and I ended up sort of bringing on a business partner with the same mindset. So she used her income as, I guess, what the banks needed, showing income for what we were going to do. And then I sort of did the hard labour. And that took us through, when I did quit work, it took us through sort of the GFC coming up in the following couple of years. And I might be a slow learner, I think, now when I look back, because it didn't put us back to square one, but it certainly put me back to work, shall we say, after the GFC went through. So, yeah.
That would have been a bit of a tough pill to swallow, I'm guessing, at that point in time. How did you cope with that, really, in the first instance?
Yeah, it was, I guess, a little bit of a dream that felt like it was shattered. Although I tended not to dwell on it too much, there was really nothing I could do except for salvage the part of the portfolio that I could move forward with, get back to work, and just reevaluate where it was I needed to go to get me to back off the tools and not at work, and have something, supplying me with an income as opposed to working for someone else.
I do really like that still stayed that core focus of yours, even with how much shit did hit the fan. Excuse the language, but, it would have been a complete overhaul, but it was still like, no, this is still what I want to be doing. You'd obviously, seen the light with what you had been able to achieve through property and knew that it was possible again. How was the trepidation then beyond that?
Yeah, I guess I really did believe that, one, it was possible, and two, that I could do it. I just needed to find the way. And it might have taken me a bit longer because I'm better at learning by doing. So someone can tell me they've made a mistake, and until I actually make the mistake, I don't really count it as seriously as what I should. But yeah, I knew I could get there. I just needed to find a different way. So
was it really a mistake, or, was it just a confluence of all the factors that just did implode at once? I feel like you can't hold the whole burden for a global financial crisis, Tam.
Yeah, I guess in hindsight, I could have done things better. I didn't. I'm not regretful in any way, because I do think that the direction I've taken now is a better direction. So I'm actually thankful for it now, because it's pushed me into commercial property, which I'm really passionate about.
Which I think is sort of, the natural end of one phase of that property investment portfolio and moving into the other and moving into the next one. So we're going to actually take a quick break there. We'll be back soon with more from Tam Thorogood. Welcome back to this episode of the Smart Property Investment Show. I'm joined by Tam Thorogood. Pretty much 30 years of investing under your belt, Tam, and you've just said that the GFC gave you a few lessons in and of itself. And one thing right at the end you just said was that pushed you down the commercial route. And I'm very curious to hear how you actually, made that shift, because that probably was a pretty daunting prospect in itself. But what was it post GFC, especially when we've seen so many companies and businesses collapse because of it, that still made you go, actually, that's worthwhile doing?
Yeah, so I went back to work and saved a little bit of money, knowing that this is what I still wanted to do. The first commercial purchase that my partner and I actually made was almost a little bit in error. It was the premises that she was running a business out of. So the owner of that building approached and said, hey, do you want to buy it? And so we ran the numbers on that. It was within our super fund. We had the cash to do it, so we didn't need to set up a bare trust or get into anything too complicated. And once I ran the numbers, I'm like, okay, this is it.
And what did the numbers actually look like? What was it flagging to you that was like, this is actually, it's not even just a good business decision to make. It's actually a very good investment decision to make.
Yeah. So when I ran residential property numbers, as you know, often you need to kick in a little bit because you also have to pay the rates and the insurance and all the stuff that's called outgoings in commercial. So as a landlord, you can recoup those from your tenant. So instead of being a negative cash flow instantly, I think from memory, we were looking at about putting $20,000 net as income into our super, owning that, and the light bulb just switched for me. I just went, what have I been doing?
Yeah, $20K straight off the bat, as almost an accident is insane.
Yeah.
So, but like straight away, positively geared, you're doing all the right things. And obviously then I'm assuming you went down a bit of a rabbit hole of research on the commercial side of things.
Yeah, I did go down a rabbit hole. I had one lot of residential property left, which was a bank of 3 units, and I didn't want to particularly sell them. I wanted to try and get a commercial return out of those if I could. So I did vendor finance those and pretty much turn them into a commercial return. I guess that might be sort of another episode potentially.
I think so. There's so much to talk about. And yes, I do agree. We'll have to get you back on here already. We haven't even unpacked everything there's to talk about today. But so obviously some smart accounting, smart finance moves going on with that side of things to help get you down the commercial path.
Yeah, so that gave me a second commercial return. And then I decided, well, if I'm going to take this seriously, I need to know as much as I can about commercial. And like I said before, I learned by doing. So I became a commercial agent.
You just jumped straight in.
Just jumped straight in. I quit my job. I went straight to commission only, which was quite frightening. At that point, I think I had about $30,000 in positive cash flow from my block of units. I'm like, well, now is the time. I've got to get into this. So, yeah, I jumped in and went for it.
Wow. And what were some of the early lessons that you did learn from that experience about the commercial sector? Because for a lot of people, it is, you're not the only one to say that it's daunting or there's other things that you need to be looking at compared to resi. But obviously to take that leap, you're very committed. You're very sure of what you want to do.
Yeah.
So what did it teach you at that point?
It taught me that my personality isn't suited to be a commercial agent. It is dog eat dog out there. I've been used to, I guess, working in a team-based environment. So that was an initial shock. Even though I was sitting in an office of 5 people, I still felt I was working on my own and quite isolated. I wasn't scared to ask questions and get help, but essentially, anything that I listed for sale or for lease was competition with the other staff in my office. So that was a little bit daunting and I had to move through that. But given I'd done a fair bit of research on commercial and running the numbers, I did actually feel like I had a little bit of an advantage over them because they were selling and leasing and I was actually looking at the deals. So that's where I got most of my insight for commercial and a little bit of confidence moving forward in being able to tell the vendors and buyers, just speaking to them a little bit differently about the numbers in the deal as opposed to making the sale.
I really love that because that is something that, having talked to a fair few commercial agents, the deal can be so important. Well, the good ones do that well. And there's an art to that. And it's not just about, what that eventual sale price is going to be. And I'm very interested to see how that has then influenced you on your own buying and selling journey in the commercial space and how you position those deals.
Yeah.
What are the kinds of things you go into it going, this is what I need to be getting out of this?
Yeah, it gave me a really good insight to what being a good landlord is as well, and how to actually look after your tenants, because your tenants are your lifeblood of your commercial portfolio. If you don't have them or you have vacant property, it can take time to release them. So I could see how some vendors and landlords would act. And I just go, okay, that is just something I cannot do, and I cannot be that type of landlord if I want to have a sustainable portfolio. So they were really good lessons. Just, I guess, keeping in contact with your tenants, understanding their business, realizing that they have hard times just like everyone else does, and you need to offer flexibility to them so that everyone wins at the end. I'm very much win-win. And I'm very approachable. So I'm a very hands-on vendor and also landlord. I did go and do the commercial property course with REIQ because I manage all my own commercial portfolio now. That's sort of what I do for my day job. So, yeah, they were really good lessons and insights. And I think that's why my portfolio is successful now, because I have that ability to see you need to be flexible and you need to deal with your tenants with respect.
How long did that stint last as a commercial agent, Tam?
Just under 3 years.
Which is pretty good going.
Yeah, pretty good going. Wasn't me.
How long ago was that?
That was about 47. Yeah, about 47 I left that.
Okay. So just before COVID, really?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. So I didn't get any of the benefits of the hot market.
Oh, but also probably a good time to not be having to deal with, all the things that commercial agents were dealing with at especially those early days, and all the uncertainty and businesses that were suddenly not able to be functioning. But good on you for giving that a crack. And obviously it's given you really great standing for what you're doing now. You've obviously now taken on the commercial property manager role, even if it's not within a business. But what's that like, and how much time do you need to be dedicating with a 10 property portfolio to something like that?
Yeah, I'm a little bit in between from managing it. I'm not a small investor and I'm not a large investor. So there's no software that I can magically use like Released to manage my portfolio. So I've sort of created my own working software on that, which has helped out. Before I did that, I was probably spending quite a bit of time, 10 properties, but I've got 18 tenants. So there's lease expiries and renewals and increases, and you've just got to keep on top of it and all in one spot. So it kept me quite busy until I got my little software sorted out. And now it's probably down to maybe 2 days a month, just sort of keeping on top of that if everything runs smoothly.
So holiday the rest of the time? What are you doing? What do you do when you're not doing that then? Because obviously there's plenty of free time based off that.
Yeah, well, I'm interested in development and developing commercial. So I went and offered my time for free with a development manager and worked with him for a little while. He then started to pay me, which was great. So I did that probably just for about 12, 18 months. And now him and I sort of look at doing developments. We're just coming up to our first one. So that sort of keeps me busy.
That's something that I also want to unpack in this episode if we get time to. But before we do, I want to, at this point, if you don't mind me highlighting, Tam, the fact that you're earning $178,000 net income before tax.
Yes.
With 2 days of work a month.
Yes. I'm sure I'm sure there's other things that I do in relation to the portfolio, but sitting down in front of the computer, then that's right. Yeah.
Which is just crazy. And I mean, it's a culmination of 30 years of effort. I'm not going to turn around and say that anyone that's listening to this episode can go away and all of a sudden, play these cards and have that kind of proper, I fully respect the 30 years of effort and hard times that would have gone into something like this. But that must be a good feeling for you.
It is a great feeling, yeah, and it was a different feeling initially when I finally arrived there because I often shifted the goalposts quite a bit. But, yeah, I'm really happy with where I'm at. Everything is flowing steadily. My portfolio is balanced between principal and interest only. I'm in a paying down phase now of that portfolio. So, yeah, in another 3 to 4 years, I should get some good capital growth as well. So it feels good to be in this position finally. At 50, sometimes I go, well, it feels like it took me a long time to get here, but who cares?
But you still got there. It doesn't matter how.
I got there in the end.
No,
yeah.
exactly. And we're going to keep unpacking some of this portfolio just after another break. See you on the other side. Welcome back to this episode of the Smart Property Investment Show. I'm talking to Tam Thorogood, who has an amazing portfolio. As I said just before the break, net income before tax is currently $178,000, and seems like there's plenty more upside to come from that, Tam. But let's talk through the property spread that you've got here. So, because I obviously, I don't know a lot about it right now, but by the sounds of it, it's been a very measured approach that you've taken over the years, and it's obviously netting you some pretty good returns at this point with an LVR of 65%, roundabouts that?
Yeah, that's about right. Yeah.
So, and this all has pretty much kicked off since the GFC. So even this part of the portfolio really has only been around for you for 12 to 15 years, if that, not even?
Yeah, not even yet.
So I guess what was the motivation behind some of these purchases, and what does that property portfolio actually look like when we break it down?
Yeah, initially I had enough for a deposit. For my strategy was to get 3 commercial properties as quickly as I could, just to mitigate risk. So if I had one vacancy, I had the other 2 that would cover it, that kind of thing. And I did hone in on medical and professional as well. They're fundamentally good payers, sustainable businesses. So like I said, our first business was our own. But the second business that was also medical. It was exercise physiology and something else. So that was our second purchase. And these purchases were all around the $300,000 to $400,000 mark. Like I had about $500 in cash.
So not expensive, really, like in the scheme of things,
Yeah, not expensive.
Huge purchases.
Yeah, I wanted to start out small, just dip my toes in the water. There was a lot of fear involved in it because, yeah, like I said, if you do have a vacancy, it can be 12, 18 months if you haven't bought something that's in the right spot. The third one was a lawyer. These are all mainly on the Sunshine Coast, my initial purchases, because I did want to be able to drive past them, rightly or wrongly. Commercial is a little bit different, and I was very new. So that was sort of my safety net to have it within my location. The third one was a lawyer. So that was sort of the breathing space then I needed to go, okay, let's see how this works. And I waited another 18 months before I purchased another property, which was actually I was an agent, so it was a vacant possession. And the reason that I purchased vacant possession was because I knew I could add value. I had insight to the market. So I bought something undervalued that I knew the rent would work out to be a nice income, and did that one.
So what was that market insight that you didn't have?
I guess from leasing and being a leasing agent, I could tell that, one, it was a good building to lease. It was in a good location. And the price that I bought it for, I could basically under rent it to get a tenant in there and bring the rent up over time.
Okay. Yep. And that's some good insight for people, that obviously from your work as a commercial agent, that, you just get someone in there, they're probably going to be starting out themselves. But if they have some success, then that's going to come back on you too.
Yeah. Yeah. That was in Nambour, actually, which was a little undervalued little town in the middle of the sunny coast, which now is sort of starting to boom a little bit. So
we've definitely heard Nambour get thrown around a few times here and there with all the research that goes on here. But so then that brings us to about 4 or 5, I think.
Yeah. After that, the opportunity to buy next door to the premises that my partner and I run a business out of came up. It's a little, there's 3 in that block. So it was an opportunity to get and own 2 of them and then control the site. That's in the centre of Mooloolaba. So I'm pretty happy with that one. It's a good location. I still only own 2 of them. The neighbour won't sell, but one day he will. So that will be a development site moving forward at some point, hopefully.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So were you approached to see if you would want to purchase that, or did you have an eye on it before that happened?
We were approached. Actually, it was a pretty low time in the market. It had been on the market, I think, for about 18 months. They didn't have a tenant. It was slightly bigger than our unit. So it was an opportunity actually for us to move into that, to buy it, move into it, slightly bigger, expand our business. and then rent out the other side that we came from, which had a great fit out, to get a medical tenant, which we did, which ended up being a psychologist.
There you go.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it feels like it probably was a little bit, all the stars aligned, but you knew what you were doing to be going in and getting something like that at the same time as well. Very cool.
Yeah.
And so then since then, we're probably getting towards the pandemic pointy end of the portfolio here.
Yeah.
What have you been doing since then?
Yeah, I saw the opportunity of low interest rates and the media saying it's all doom and gloom. And when you do go to a lot of educational sort of seminars and stuff, they always say start buying when the world is saying those sorts of things. So I trusted my instinct, and I bought a industrial shed in Townsville. I lived in Townsville and Cairns working for Telstra for a few years, so I knew the area. So it was the first time I actually sort of branched out, not within driving distance. I felt comfortable because I knew it. It had 4 tenants just under one roof. It was just a small 300 square metre industrial shed that was going for a good price, and now I know why.
Oh, no. I don't know if I like where this is going.
Yeah, it wasn't too bad. Like, it had 4 tenants, but it wasn't strata titled. So these 4 tenants were sort of sharing power, sharing water, sharing space. I don't mind a little bit of a mess with a commercial property. I feel like I have the skills to sort of bring it out of that. But it has taken, I think that was in early 2020. Yeah, I have taken it from 4 tenants. I took it down to 3, then down to 2, and then now I have the anchor tenant who's been there 25 years, has taken the whole building. So that's worked out good, but there was some heartache and quite a few trips to Townsville and, doing some work. So, yeah.
There you go. I was just going to say that would have been, if you did try and change that across the strata, not a very fun time. Did you go down that avenue, or did it just kind of end up sorting itself out?
No, it ended up sorting itself out. I had a few tenants sort of indicate they wanted to leave, so I actually let them break leases for the benefit of the property and for the benefit of the performance of the property long term. I let 2 tenants break their lease and had it vacant for a little while, and then eventually, I did approach my tenant who was in the front of the building, who I could just tell he needed more space. He was sort of busting at the seams, and so I did work with him fairly closely and do a good deal, knowing that the long-term benefit would outweigh any short-term deals that I made.
Some really sage advice there, I think. Just you're doing it all for the long haul, Tam.
Yes, definitely. You've got to do it for the long haul. If you're short-sighted, it just doesn't work. Yeah.
Especially given the period of time that we've just come through. A lot of people would have just appreciated, you working with them through that time too.
Yeah, definitely.
So that's where we've gotten to now. Have there been any other purchases recently, or are we just looking towards the developments?
Yes, no, I did buy 6 others. When I say 6, though, 5 are on one block. They're a whole block of industrial units. And then across the road is also an industrial shed. But the reason I bought that was because it's in an old industrial area in Coolum itself, actually, and it's now been rezoned town centre. And because I'd been working with a developer, I knew what that meant. So, I've just tenanted that up. One of those sheds, I have done what they call a material change of use and done a residential loft in the back, I guess you could call it, which I'll go and live in while I renovate my house, and then I'll rent out.
There you go. So you're back in Coolum. You made it.
I'm back in Coolum, yes. I do have my primary place of residence in Coolum, so it's not all bad stories.
With that place, you said knew what it meant, and that rezoning, and obviously that's a huge thing for it to be, that zoning to change from what I'm guessing was straight industrial into town centre planning.
Yeah.
What does that mean for you down the track?
Yeah, what it means is that when something's zoned and used as an industrial usage, in my area, you're looking at about, and I'll talk square metre rates, so hopefully that won't confuse people, but a tenant will pay about $110 to $120 per square metre. So when it's rezoned and you put a little bit of love into the property and it's town centre, that automatically takes you up to around $250 a square metre. So you're really doubling, I guess, your your rental over time, I know it can get to that price, and part of it already has gone up to that price. So yeah, and the industrial uses will move out of town. There are things like car mechanics and stuff, they can't go in there anymore. So in mine, I have a gym and I have a restaurant and a homewares place. So yeah, I'm changing the usage and the landscape a little bit of that area.
Yeah, cool. So we've started in medical and professional, and then we've gone actually, restaurants, gyms, all working for you in your portfolio. Was that intentional? I guess, obviously the town planning does change that in itself and the essence of that. But
yeah,
where do you see, a good value in the spread?
Yeah, although it seems like I might have sort of switched and for no reason, it really was the town planning that got me across the line with that and the use. I don't really love retail. Retail in Queensland is covered under a different act, and there's a lot more rules around it, whereas industrial and commercial office is a little bit more Wild West, I suppose you could say, and I find that easier to deal with. So yeah, it was really the zoning that switched me over the edge for that. Right now, I'm happy I've got a mix, so some medical, some industrial, a little bit of retail. So that's, yeah, I'm happy with that. If one particular, I guess, sector gets affected, then I have a backup in the others. So yeah, I like the mix.
And they do say it's 100 years between pandemics. So it'd be nice for that not to affect anyone else anytime soon. But yeah, no, that does sound like a really well-balanced spread that you've got there. And you're talking developments now. I know we're sort of getting to the end of this episode. And as we've said, we're going to have to sit down and chat again because there's so much more we can be talking through. But where to from here for you, Tam?
Yeah, the site we're looking at now is a residential site that is actually low-impact industrial. So it's, again, been rezoned with the small amount of experience in development. The plan is to, I guess, knock that house down and put up perhaps 10 man caves or whatever we can get onto the site. So we're just in the due diligence phase and the feasibility phase of seeing how we can move forward if it's profitable. So, yeah, we'll run with that and see how it goes.
I love too that you're self-taught with all of this. Where do you go to for your resources, for your insight, for your information? Because you're clearly going in very, very well armed. So, while it is a Wild West out there, to use your metaphor for what you're doing some of the time, but even the internet there's some crazy information out there. So what is it for you that really does actually provide you with good insight?
Yeah, I made some connections while I was a commercial agent. And also when I offered up my services for free to work with the development manager, that just, it opens the door to not only them, but the people that they work with, the intent that you provide when you're willing to do that and be humble and go in and just ask questions. People really want to help and they love to help others who are wanting to help themselves. So it was really, through doing that was probably the best thing that I ever did, which made the connections for me to be able to do this development now if it moves forward. And the other stuff is really, I listen to a lot of podcasts now. I don't really read anymore. It kind of feels like it's almost outdated. But yeah, shows like yours and a few others that really just provide good insight. I always get one little snippet out of one little podcast and go, oh, I can tweak that or apply that. So yeah, it's just gaining all those little insights and adding them up along the way.
So what have been the biggest lessons that you've learned through this period, which has been, a long, extensive journey for you to get to where you are today, but it's obviously paid off. What have been those biggest things and when did you learn them? Was it a long time down the track before some of those lessons did come to the surface?
I was very short-sighted when I first started and God, if I just bought and hold. That's probably the biggest lesson, that I always felt that because I wasn't doing something, it meant that I was lazy. But holding on to what you have and letting time do its thing, I think you guys always talk about timing the market as opposed to timing the market, where I was definitely trying to time the market. Yeah, if I look back, I'd give myself that piece of advice on just buy and hold is pretty good and take a long-term point of view. Nothing happens quickly.
Fair enough. I mean, we've talked about, what's next with you in the development stage of things, and you're clearly already reaping the rewards of what you have done to date. But what is really your ultimate goal from all of this, Tam?
That's a good question. I think I'm at my ultimate goal from a cash flow point of view. And the challenge will be making sure that my personality suits doing developments. It's a different game. There's some risk in that. So I'm dipping my toe in the water to see if I have the appetite for that. And if I do, I think that will be the end goal. Just do a few developments along the way, nothing too crazy, not too many at one time, until I get sick of doing that. So I love property. I know I'll always do it in some way. But yeah, my cash flow positions put me in a position where now I have the choice, and that feels really nice.
So it's all just at the risk of diminishing it. And I don't want it to come across that way at all, but it's all a bit of fun now for you.
It is all a bit of fun now. Yeah. So, and, everyone says that if you do enjoy your work, then it's, it's just far better. So yeah, I am enjoying it.
There you go. Well, Tam, thank you so much for taking the time today. It's been so wonderful to chat, to hear some of the lessons you've learnt over the years. And I'm already looking forward to the next time we're going to have to sit down and chat, because it sounds like there's a few cool things that you've done along the way that we've barely scratched the surface on. But I really appreciate you taking the time, and I hope our listeners have as well.
Yeah, thanks, Grace. I really appreciate it. I hope that in some way I've helped your investors.
To everyone who is listening along, we hope you have enjoyed this episode. Like or review us on whatever platform that you listen to your podcasts on. If you have any questions, or you might even be like Tam and be sitting on a pretty cool property portfolio that we should hear about, let us know. Reach out, editor@smartpropertyinvestment.com.au. Stay up to date with us on our social media, Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. Until next episode, stay safe and well wherever you're listening from. Bye-bye.
The information featured in this podcast is general in nature and does not take into consideration your financial situation or individual needs, and should not be relied upon. Before making any investment, insurance, tax, property, or financial planning decision, you should consult a licensed professional who can advise whether your decision is appropriate for you. Guests appearing on this podcast may have a commercial relationship with the companies mentioned.
Would you like the latest news and insights in HR, leadership, and people management? HR Leader has you covered. Subscribe at hrleader.com.au.